Well, Reed, you talk about failure a lot. What is a moment in your career where you hit like a rock bottom, and how did you bounce back?
I'd say there's probably two main areas, one at the beginning and one at the end. My, as I was telling you, that junior team, I played 2 years there, the one where I got in the fights in camp. And then I was trying out for the Western Hockey League team, my hometown, Moose Jaw, the Moose Jaw Warriors. And the coach at the time, I went in and talked to him that summer, and he's like, okay, we're going to give you exhibition games. We're going to give you a chance. I went into training camp, beat everybody up. And then they cut me before the inter-squad game. I didn't even get a chance to be in the inter-squad game. So I was pissed off. And like I was telling you guys earlier, I just been cut from so many teams. I was 19 years old and I was just defeated. So I went on and back then we didn't have cell phones or pagers or nothing. So I went on a 3-day bender. My dad couldn't find me. I had been cut from the major junior team, but that team down in Minot, North Dakota, that Saskatchewan junior hockey team, was like, oh my gosh, we're getting Losey back. This is so good for us. Right. And I'm like, I don't even want to play hockey anymore. So I get home that Sunday morning and my dad sits down and talks with me, and he's like, what are you going to do here, bud? Like, your coach is blowing up my phone. You just disappear for 3 days. Like, that's not cool. And I'm like, I'm sorry, like I just was done. I had to go blow it off. And he's like, are you going to head back to Minot? And I said, no, I think I'm going to quit. I said, just done getting cut. He's like, well, what are you going to do? And at the time, my dad owned a real estate company. And I said, well, I was thinking I could come sell real estate for you. And he looked me right in the eyes and he said, I didn't know I was hiring. And I was like, okay, that's humbling. So my dad said, listen, son, he said, I've told you 3 things in your life: be a great teammate, be coachable, and I'll work the guy across from you. I never worried about, whether you scored goals, what happened. Those were the only 3 things that we focused on. He said, if you're done and you want to quit, that's fine. And he said, if you want to sell real estate with me, that's fine. He said, but I'm going to ask you to do me a favor before you do this. The amount of time and energy that I put into this hockey career of yours, I don't believe you're done. I think this is just a blip in the road. You go back down to Minot for 1 month. And he said, if after 30 days, you still don't have the hockey fever and you go down and you give it one more whirl and you hate the game and you're done and you want to come back and sell real estate, well, I'll teach you everything I need to know and you can take this company over. And I said, that's a fair deal. I'll do that. So I went back down to Minot. And ironically, I ended up coming back 30 days later, but it wasn't to sell real estate with my dad. I had gone down to the Minot Top Guns, which is like a tier 2 level, and Moose Jaw Warriors a tier 1 level. And I had 10 goals and 7 assists in the first 7 games. And the Warriors were like, maybe we made a mistake here. So they called me back up. They told me that I'd be on the team for the rest of the year, assured me of that. And I said, okay, I signed a contract with them. And I ended up getting drafted by the St. Louis Blues that summer.
Wow.
That's awesome. So, it's, you never know when you're ready to quit. And if there's ever somebody out there that loves you and tells you, just push yourself just a little bit more. Always take them up on that offer. Because if I wouldn't have the career and the world that I have today. So my dad was instrumental in my hockey career. And then I would say the next portion of battling through, at least hockey adversity was, my second last year, I broke my jaw. I got we had the lockout and I was out of shape coming back into camp, kind of just, fucked off the entire lockout year, and then didn't, had some issues internally with my family and my wife and whatever else, probably some alcohol. And I wasn't in shape and I wasn't ready to play. And so the Blues put me on waivers, and it was a time when I probably would have been picked up by somebody, but every team had their team picked for like the last year, right? And had these young guys that were ready to go. So I ended up clearing waivers and I went to the minors, and then I was a healthy scratch the first week in the minors, and I'm just, oh my goodness. And then the first night I get in, I'm getting a fight with a guy named Garrett Burnett. And I'm working him for most of the fight. I switch over to left, and he slips and falls and swings an uppercut and hits me in the jaw, and he snaps my jaw here completely in half. So it was like, I looked like the Predator. Like, it was terrible. Oh. And so I got a plate and 4 screws. I was out for most of the year, played 20 games in the minor leagues on the way back in. And then, it wasn't done. Again, I'm like, hey, I can go back. I can make the NHL again. I tried out for Chicago. fought Derek Bugart, had a great camp, made the team, was there for 6 games, got sent down to the minors again, and finished my year out there. And at that point in time, I'm like, you know what? I've already made the NHL one time. I don't need to do this again. I was 31 years old. Everybody thought I was crazy for retiring, but I'm happy that I did because it got me an opportunity to get in with some good companies. I worked for the next 13 years, Ritchie Brothers Auctioneers and Favorite Cat. So that the breaking of the jaw was that moment where I told you guys earlier, I never really wanted to fight to begin with. And that was the beginning of the end for me. Like, is this really what I want to do? Like, I want like these guys, I went from being the chaser to the chasee, and that's a different story. And I just didn't want to be a part of that anymore. I didn't want to fight anymore. I was sick of it. That broken jaw injury was probably one of the worst that I've ever had. Man, for the first 7 days, it felt like somebody was smashing me in the face with a baseball bat. Like, it was the most horrific thing I've ever been through.
Do you have to wired shut?
Oh, yeah. Wired shut. And once you get the wires off, that's when the real work begins, because they keep the hooks on there and you have elastics on there, and you basically have to, because your jaw is stagnant after 7 weeks or 8 weeks of that. I feel it's true. I couldn't barely get a toothbrush in there. So just the rehab on that, everything. And then I broke my jaw. So it's not like I can go throw a bubble on and go out and just dangle around because I wasn't there to score goals. Right. So that was the beginning of the end, which wasn't bad. Again, like, there's a great story after, getting cut and wanting to quit, broken jaw, gave it another kick, made the NHL again, but I just knew that it was time for me to go on and do something else. I didn't have an education. I didn't have a job. And I had a little bit of money in the bank. But I just knew that, my purpose was something else, that there was something else out there for me. And I'm just not scared to jump into that. Like, when I feel like it's time to go, it's time to go. I'm not going to hang around when I don't feel like, not only am I not wanted, or I want to be there. So those are probably the 2 times that are the biggest that I've had to adversity and had to try and figure something else out.
Man, that broken jaw is a tough one. I have a friend of ours, former guest. He's a UFC fighter. He broke his jaw in a freak accident in practice, and just kind of seeing on the outside of what he had to do, recovering from that. It's Simone, Evan. Yeah.
I wish, and then you're just going to be kind of like, especially in the fighting aspect.
You got to be gum.
Oh, yeah.
Do you still have the blade name?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they won't come out. It's in there one that they passed over top. But I don't go off and, like, everyone's like, do you go off in like the beepers? Yeah. I don't know. It's not that big, but it's stronger than it was before. So I'm not going to find out, with all the setbacks and all the things like that, the lessons that you learned. What is the one lesson from hockey that you think every kid, whether they play the sport or not, should know? Well, I think that for me, loving the game the right way is the most important. And like I've mentioned 2 or 3 times in this interview, the one thing that I've taken with me through my life is the lesson that my dad gave me about being a great teammate, being coachable, and outworking the people around you. Because those are really the things that we have control over. I tell kids all the time, you don't have control over what hockey team you're on. You don't have control over whether or not you get ice time at the end of the game, or you're on the power play or on the penalty killing, or if you're the captain or any of that stuff. And too many times these kids will get, somebody will get to see, or they'll be bitching about the coach's kid, or all the different things that come to it. And it's just distraction in their mind. And so if these kids can clear their mind at a young age and train themselves to clear their mind at a young age, they're going to be able to do that easier when they move into their next portion of life. And, we were talking before the show that only 7,500 guys have ever played 1 game or more in the NHL in the history of the sport. So you got about a 1 in 5 million chance of kids that play hockey in the world to make it. And it's you got better, like, literally got a better chance of winning the lottery. And so at the end of the day, I just tell them, the game of hockey is something you can love from a skating standpoint or a fan standpoint for the rest of your life. Don't be down. And even kids that are a little bit older, listen, if you make junior hockey, you're stud. Like, you have eclipsed something that most kids don't do. If you make it into the minor leagues, in the low-level minor leagues, wow. You make it to the East Coast of the American Hockey League, or you play over in the elite leagues in Europe or the KHL, like, again, you're one of the top players in the world. You make it to the NHL, like, this is so stupid, right? And so don't compare yourself to others. Really focus on where your strengths and weaknesses are, and then understand it. And one of the things that I've adapted over probably the last year of my life, the last 5 years of my life, probably 8 years of my life have been really difficult. But I'm in the best headspace I've ever been in. And one of the things that I've adapted over the last probably
8 to 10 months was, I don't lose anymore. I either win or I learn. And that mindset has taken the pressure, the way that I held myself accountable in ways that really weren't fair to myself. Because if I take the losing and I take it out, and I take that loss, or I take that setback, or whatever that is, and I try and understand and I learn from it, and I love that moment of my life, I'm going to start to become a strength, and I'm going to start to win at that. And so, too many times we put pressure on ourselves, especially as men. That's unnecessary, especially the older you get. Start getting some children, start having some setbacks, whether it be at work or a divorce or, a death or whatever comes from that. And, we're human creatures, and I'm a firm believer that there's a human side to us and there's a spiritual side to us. And the more I've been attached with that spiritual side, the better my life has gotten. And, I'm not a religious man. And I think religion has probably hurt more people in the world than it's ever helped. But inside of that umbrella, there's a faith that you can have in there, and there's a relationship that you can have in there that is pure and it's good, and it's helped me through my toughest times, which is learning how to forgive yourself. The hardest thing that I've ever had to learn how to do is forgiving myself for being me. And you start to stack your 20s, your 30s. I'll be 49 in June. I'm 48 years old right now. You start to stack all that shame and guilt and sin and everything else that comes with it your way. And it can get heavy. That load can get real heavy. And if you don't have anywhere to go with that, it can be challenging. And so understanding how to have a mindset where you don't try and live in human emotion, right? I tell people all the time, happiness is not an emotion, it's a choice. And you can be happy if you want. And there's always going to be pockets where you're not going to be. But I don't live in the depressive state that I did years ago, because it's just not worth it to me anymore. And I've changed my mindset on how I want to be and how I want to live. And so, I would just encourage kids to, work hard, be cool. You're going to go through a lot of shit in your life, but just make sure you focus on those three things and you should be okay.